to Fire Emblem, I think the biggest draw that this series has, besides its strong gameplay, is most definitely the characters. But with so many characters, it's not a surprise when Intelligent Systems pushes the more popular characters over the entirety of the Thracia 776 cast. It sure is fun seeing the 40th Camilla ult. But even deeper than that, there are a few characters that we will never see again because the game got cancelled halfway through its lifespan due to the pandemic. That's right, I'm talking about Fire Emblem Cipher and their many original characters. Fortunately for characters like Yuzu, Emma, Shade, and Lando, or Randall here in the West, we're fortunate enough to get their own DLC in Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia as wandering warriors from their respective continents. But there are 4 more original characters that never got to see a game, those being Neeve, Alice, Valjean, and Poe. While each of these characters have their own gimmicks, their shared gimmick is that they are wandering warriors, traveling from continent to continent, reclassing to learn new skills, and most importantly, give us the feeling of a timeline in Fire Emblem Cipher. Yuzu is probably the face of the Cipher OCs with how many people seem to like her. This is probably mostly in part due to her appearance in Echoes, but while she may have debuted in Shadows of Valentia, Yuzu is actually from Hoshido, and more specifically as a character that trained under Ryoma. Because of this backstory, she represents the infantry type units out of the Cipher OCs, reclassing to a plethora of different classes wielding many different weapons that suit the need of the continent. For instance, while she may be a Myrmidon in Hoshido, she can also be a Swordmaster in Eulise, and later on be a Sniper in Arcanea. Her reasoning for getting stronger and visiting these other continents is because she's searching for her brother, who she mentions here and there in the Cipher quotes. She obviously respects his strength deeply and chases after the same strength. However, because of her strict training, she doesn't spend time with other people, making it so that she has a hard time picking up social cues, but this could also be in the fact that she's meant to represent a foreign character in a new country. Emma, like Yuzu, is also from Hoshido, but unlike Yuzu, she's training to become a Pegasus Knight. Because of this, Emma ends up being the residential flyer of the group, always being reclassed into different flying classes, ranging from Pegasus Knights, Kinshi Knights, and Wyverns. But most people might remember her for her ability in Echoes, where she can triangle attack by herself. While this may make her look incredibly experienced, as triangle attack is a very difficult coordinated attack between 3 different characters, Emma is very inexperienced. She's new to the army and is oftentimes seen doing her best, but because of this she's oftentimes ignorant to the realities of war. Despite this, she tries her best to do new things, even coming up with new techniques, though I think most would say they aren't the greatest moves. But her importance as a character, in my opinion, stems from her personality. She's the bright-eyed, cheery, give-it-your-all kind of character that opposes Yuzu's seriousness and Shade and Lando's pessimism, giving the Cipher OCs a little bit more contrast when it comes to personality. Shade is the complete opposite to Emma in almost every aspect of each other's character. While Emma is the bright-eyed, cheery rookie from Hoshido, Shade is a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point veteran mage from Nor. The veteran status that she has in Nor as one of their top mages is the main reason as to why she represents the magic classes out of the original Cipher OCs. Besides a few exceptions, you'll see her rock the Dark Sage, Sorcerer, and Witch most of the time, probably due to being a mage from Nor. And while she may tend to be in the more dark mage classes, there are times like when she ventured into Tellius where you see her dabble with the Bishop class, though I guess for Tellius standards, it isn't exactly the most lawful good. Because of her age in comparison to the other Cipher OC, she tends to be the mentor or older sister type character to most of the other characters, where a lot of them end up learning a thing or two, or in Emma's case, a ton from her tutelage. In fact, the player playing Cipher would also be considered a student that she teaches how to play Cipher, as evident by her last card saying that she has nothing left to teach you. Shade really showing us the bitter reality of Cipher's end. Lando, unlike the other 3 being from Fateslandia, is a cavalier from Alib, but he doesn't necessarily have an allegiance to any real part of Alib, as he's a wandering mercenary working for gold. He's a carefree dude that loves to gamble, an archetype of character that we tend to see from time to time in Fire Emblem, though unlike other characters, he sort of becomes a father figure for Emma because of their continued relationship traveling from continent to continent together. But don't get your hopes up of this actually stopping his bad habits. He's a terrible father figure because of his continued degeneracy, with Emma having to pull Lando out of trouble. At first glance, Lando is lazy, uncaring, and even sloppy, as evident by his messy hair, but he's actually incredibly skilled at using swords, lances, and riding the horse, hence why he's the residential mounted character of the Cipher originals, rocking classes like Duke Knight in Ugrul, Great Knight in Eulise, and Paladin when he's home at Alib. He's skilled and obviously has a huge array of skills that he unfortunately will never use because he thinks it's too much of a hassle to do so. Lando definitely earns a spot as one of my favorite OCs for being that guy that can't really give a shit. After the Cipher DLC in Shadows of Valentia, the developers over at the Cipher card game thought it would be time to add 4 more characters to bolster up the roster of travelers, starting with Neeve. an almost android-like character in the way that she acts. Her sole purpose for going around different continents is to simply gather data on what humans do and how they fight, and then seemingly passing judgment on whether or not a continent can exist or not. And thanks to her powers with the boundless chaos, Neeve is not necessarily tied to any rule with her classing, unlike the other Cipher OCs. She can seemingly reclass into anything, but with the title of Chaos in the front, hence why she's the Chaos Swordmaster or the Chaos Sage. But outside of just being an incredibly strong source of strength for Neeve, this power also ends up being the reason as to why the Cipher OCs are able to travel around to different continents at seemingly different points in time, hence why Yuzu can join Aum's army. And even cooler, and why it's such an interesting power, is because this power is referenced in the Cipher game as an actual zone, known in other card games as the Banished Zone. It's cool that this character ties a lot of the lore and game together. Poe is actually the last of the 4 new OCs, but it's impossible to talk about Neeve without talking about Poe, as her sole purpose is to stop the boundless chaos from consuming different worlds. This is why her main strength lies in warp magic. She can fight Neeve normally, or she can use the warp staff. So, because of this, Poe is only seen in magic classes like Shade, but more so in traditional mage classes that are able to use staffs like Valkyrie, Bishops, and Gremory. Poe is also, out of the new characters, the only character with an actual allegiance, Fodland, as that was the color she debuted in without another colorless card to go alongside her. However, she does mention that she is an exchange student, kind of hinting at the fact that she might not actually be from Fodland in general. The most unfortunate thing about Poe, however, is that since she is the last of the characters to join the game, she doesn't really have that much lore developed for her, and because Three Houses was the last of the main games to join the fray, it's unfortunate that her story was cut short, since Neeve having a rival was all too much fun. Perhaps, in a different reality, she gets more than 5 cards. Maybe that's the reality I need to go to next. The last 2 Cipher OCs are impossible to talk about without each other, Alice and Valjean, as Alice is a noble and Valjean is a retainer, a dynamic that we see commonly in Fire Emblem games. The great part about this duo is that Alice is a headstrong, reckless, but pure-spirited noble that ventures to different continents to learn how to become a better leader. But because of her recklessness, Valjean is kinda there cleaning up her mess. For instance, Alice would go around giving all her funds, so Valjean would have to go fishing to make up the money. But it's because of her noble spirit and Valjean's loyalty to these ideals that we end up loving these 2 characters. Alice in particular has no real class rule. Thanks to her noble title, we see her most commonly in magic classes, but she has dabbled in classes like Paladin and Wyvern, while Valjean fills out the final missing roles of the armored class, being strictly in the armored class like Baron, Great Knight, and even in his one magic class of Sorcerer, also in armor. Unfortunately, Cipher came to an end, and the Cipher OCs met their end, but in Fire Emblem fashion, they all got epilogues. Yuzu still searches for her brother following the faint whispers about him from continent to continent. Emma continues her training as a Pegasus Knight and also plays Cipher, though her results aren't that great. Shade ends up teaching magic to the next generation, and even has people seeking her out to teach them Cipher, though they always end up leaving with tears due to her harsh but effective teaching. Lando is said to have made the best gamble of his life or the worst gamble of his life, with some saying he's living a life of luxury or living a life of debt. Neeve continues to search for knowledge and wrote her seminal monograph, A Compendium of Cipher Decks, a 100-volume series still being printed to this day. Poe continues to fight against the boundless chaos, clashing against Neeve. It's said neither really come out as victors in their battle. And Alice continues to become a better and better leader as she travels to more places, with Valjean being both sad and overjoyed that his liege is becoming a proper lady.